All right. So what I want to do first is let's try to recap those 4 points just as kind of a structure for us to work off of. So I think I have the first and third points, but let's just try to start with. So the first point that I heard from you was um, I kind of felt like the points from 1 through 4 started off like, oh, that's not polarizing at all. That's like a really good answer. Uh, and then I feel like they got more polarizing as you went on in the 2, 3, 4. So let's try to recap them just so we can put a label to them. So the first point, um, the second point was a little bit of you feel like there might be some social anxiety in having those conversations. The third was if someone's more comfortable being someone else, that's kind of makes you suspicious. You didn't use suspicious as a word, but it makes you suspicious about like why is that? Like is that kind of off puts you off a little bit. So that's 2 and 3. The fourth was that the three things that Halloween is an excuse for is eating candy, getting drunk, and hooking up. And then you follow that up with don't love candy as much as you used to, or you just don't like it as much. 2, you're married, and 3, you don't drink as much as compared to people at Halloween parties. So that was kind of like the antithesis of your thesis. So the first point, though, how is it slipping my mind? It was like a very, I should have noted it on my phone. By the way, when I'm taking notes, I don't write my notes because it comes up on the microphone. So I actually have to type my notes into my phone because it's silent. So I did not type it this time. What was your first point, Craig? It was a tame point, but I thought it was a good point. Yes, like that one. I was like, oh, I didn't think about that one at all. And it's a great point because especially depending on what party you're going to, you might be going to a really close friends party or like a friend of a friend or a friend of a friend of a friend, and that could create a few degrees of separation of interests and age groups, and then you could just for one thing leads to another, not just leading, candy leads to drinking, drinking leads to socializing, but one thing leads to another in terms of there was already some unfamiliarity with the group. Now there's an unfamiliarity with the interests of the group. And now you're like, I don't know what any of these costumes are. I have one quick point on that. I was going to say, where do we go from here? But I have one quick point on that is, in my experience, this past weekend, Halloween parties were a little bit different because the one was their third annual. It was the third year in a row I've gone to the same party. And then the other one had a bunch of people from that other party. It was just a different, one was in Manhattan, one was in Brooklyn. For those listening who have ever spent time in New York, when one of your friends lives in Manhattan and one lives in Brooklyn, or one borough for one borough for the other, you'd be surprised. It's actually really challenging to get together at a certain point because the subways are great, but sometimes they're not connected based on where people are in one borough. So that's just a complete sidebar that has nothing to do with Halloween. But what I was going to say, Craig, is with that social, you feel like you have social anxiety or a degree of it in situations, and Halloween might kind of augment it. I'm wondering if you don't have the pop culture reference for them, and maybe there's a little bit of social anxiety. Is it wrong to say that your first question is so what are you tonight? Do you think that's a good question, or does that actually offend people? Like, oh, you don't know? Is my costume not good? Like, what's your take on that, huh? Okay, so I'll try to draw an example of so someone over the weekend. I didn't know who their character was, even when they said the name. But then I was like, it was from a movie, and they said, oh, it was a Bruce Willis movie. I was like, oh, it's the movie with and I just picked the movie that I remember with Bruce Willis that was the most unique because their costume was very unique, and I was right. But for you, it almost sounds like even if they give you the character, you're like, I don't even know what movie. Like I can't even guess what movie or which show that's from. It's like I have nothing to work off of here. So how do I even have a productive, not really the right word, but bear with me, a productive conversation with you to find ways to connect with you. If I don't know the character, I don't know what show or source of entertainment it's from, and I might barely know you because you're a friend of a friend of a friend. So that combined with if there's any social anxiety, it's like, wow, this is a terrible party for me. Where are we going with this, Craig? So it's an impossible task to be able to make the given that you're talking about the icebreaker Halloween party. It makes sense that it's the costume, but you're saying whereas in a an ice before a work meeting, it's like, well, how was your weekend? If someone says good, it's totally chill. Just move on. It's not like, oh, that was weird. Nothing to say. Whereas in a Halloween party, it would be that doesn't happen. It's not just good. It's like people say more things, but you're. I guess I'm a little lost here. Maybe you can bring me. Maybe you can bring me back here. So let me ask you then. So for the listeners that don't know, if you listen to this episode, chances are you probably heard in a past episode that me and Craig went to undergraduate together, went to college together. So Craig, do you think you always felt this way about the because that last point you made of I mean I mean you weren't married in college, but what I'm trying to say is the dynamic of parties. Did you feel like the social anxiety? Did you feel that way in school as well, or do you think that's like being in a big city? Like, can you kind of talk me through that? If you're, I'm just curious. Like, is that something you felt for a long time, or is this more like recent years? At this point, recording, we've been out of school for about 4 years, so we've done an undergraduate degree in the School of Hard Knocks. What do you think about that? Because I just for our listeners to know, we went to school together, so that's kind of my lens into it. And me and Craig actually see a classic story. After school, we see each other less, but we also live on different coasts of the country, so that plays a role. Also, I'd be curious because the I like the way you put it of the experience of putting on the band-aid in an uncomfortable situation, or I feel like we've all experienced that. I would actually be curious if there's a stat around the percentage of people that are willing to admit that in like a survey or a study, because I gotta think it's like probably over 80% in terms of people that have admitted to that, because it is so true. Like, and for you now, I'm just thinking you experience the benefits of drinking less. It's actually funny that this conversation we're talking about drinking right now. It's amazing how these. Yes, there's drinking that happens at Halloween, but this potentially could get a little deeper than I thought we were going to get, which is totally fine. But yeah, the thing I was thinking about was you experience the benefits, like you said, of drinking less, but now it's not a disadvantage. It's just now it's those situations that might have been comfortable in the past. There's no band-aid, so it's like Jesus, this is so uncomfortable. Jesus. And I'm tentative to call it a disadvantage. It's more of the blinders are off, or the band-aid is nowhere to be found in the medicine cabinet. So it's interesting though. I mean, where do we go from here? Because I feel like we just I alluded to us knowing each other from college, so I took you that route. But what do you think? What do you think of her? What do you think of her today? We're about 20 minutes in today. We didn't discuss an episode length time for today. I know we did 30 minutes last time. We did an hour before that. So do we want to kind of decide now how much longer we want to go? Just to kind of give us not a blueprint, because we don't have a blueprint today, but what do you think? If we go to the same like this Friday, we have 10 more minutes. If we go what we did the day before, that gives us another 40. It's not a right answer. Okay. Note to the audience: Craig has turned the tables. He has actively turned the tables. It has happened. I felt it. uh, okay. 4 points of Halloween. So please do if you can. And I'll try to fill in gaps if I need to. But that would be helpful to recap the four. Also, it's helpful for the listeners, right? Like it's probably not bad to repeat stuff. on a show. 10, 15 minutes. I don't think I could even jam this all into 10, 15 minutes, but I'll do my best. So it's where I go back to, it's not specific to Halloween, but it's specific to parties in college because I didn't drink for basically the first year of college, which is a little, only my close friends know this. Like Craig, you knew this, right? And if you didn't, it was probably mentioned a while ago, and it's pretty easy to forget because because then we did drink a lot together. So but the first year I had a point of pride for not drinking, and it's interesting because I'm not incredibly religious by trade. I'm not, and I know that is a reason that can get people to actively not drink. There's just some religious ideas around that. So that wasn't my reason. I actually had a point of pride where I prided myself on being able to interact with anyone and anyone at any time. And I felt like if I started drinking, I was going to lose that confidence and that skill because that means I'm taking the easy way out. I'm doing the Band-Aid on the thing that even my friends around me were doing. But I was so prideful about this. It was actually, I don't know how to describe it, but then in the years after that, when I did drink, I would say like a normal university college student, I experienced the benefits of when things were uncomfortable in a social interaction. It's like, oh, well, the Band-Aid's on, it's fine. So I'm like, I totally get it. And I've fallen into that too. But it started out as I didn't want to be forced to drink. I remember I was trying out for a sport at the school, and little known fact is that sports tend to bring a drinking culture, regardless of what school you go to. And there was some pressure for me to drink, and I didn't want to do it. There was that point of pride that I just mentioned, but the other part of the point of pride is like I've held off for drinking so long. I would almost feel ashamed of myself if I let someone force me to do it. It's like, it's got to be my decision. I've held off too long for this. I haven't had a lick in high school. Didn't drink before college. I was so, you could argue I was prude about it. But I was like, I'm not going to have someone else make this decision for me. So that was how I started with that in terms of the drinking conversation. I did not answer your question though, right? Because you wanted me to answer my take on the 4 points: pop culture, social anxiety, people pretending to be someone else, suspicion of why people are more comfortable being someone else, and then the 3 things that happen on Halloween parties. So I didn't answer your question. So where do I go? Well, Craig, whether it was true or not, it's what I believed. That's why I kept emphasizing confidence, pride. I had very few things to be confident about at that moment. It was just a transitional period of life, like most people. But that was something I was like, I am good at this. And that was a story I told myself. So that's why there's a strong fervor in what I'm saying, because I remember how strong it was for me. Yeah, but then I also mentioned too, I definitely lost my way a little bit too, because the Band-Aid is the most comfortable extra comfort plus Band-Aid ever. There's been several times where it's like, oh my goodness. Like oh my God. Craig, we haven't got to this. There's things I love about our alma mater, and there's things I'm incredibly disappointed with our alma mater. It's kind of a shame. No, you're right. It is a shame because I remember going to even like a holiday party for our alma mater in New York City. So I traveled to it from New Jersey. And I remember I had such awkward conversations. It was like so awkward. And this is where someone says, oh, Randy, it was probably you. It's like, I'm sure it was partly me. But some people I talked to, I can't even describe the level of awkwardness. It was like pulling teeth. And they weren't, I remember one conversation in particular, there were 2 people talking, and I went by, and I didn't really care for some of these people, but I was like, I'm at this event with, I'll just say hi, this and that. But I felt like a goofball after, because I was trying to like diffuse what felt like tension, and I would say like a joke, and then it was like met with dead air. I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredibly uncomfortable. Like, and it's also hard to describe too, because I think it's pretty common, Craig, to misremember the actual reality of situations. But it's where was I going with this? I am getting off track here, Craig. I am falling off the wagon to use a, a drinking term. Also, the Band-Aid helped, I guess. So with drinking, there's different archetypes of drinkers, right? There's the funny drinker, there's the sad drinker, the angry drinker, and then there's probably a fourth, but those are kind of three main ones. In my experience, and I think back to that one holiday event I went to, it could have just been the mindset I was in going in, but I felt like I was surrounded by not everyone, but there's just some people that I think are just more negative when they're sober. Because I definitely remember times where they were not Debbie Downers, and I felt like there were so many Debbie Downers, but that's not unique to drinking. That's just Craig. I think it's just easier to talk about negative stuff than to actually build a conversation around optimism. Like that's why people have that skill because it's in high demand. uh, but yeah, like yeah, because I would say that too. When if I'm it's an awkward if I'm having an awkward conversation with someone, yeah, crack a few jokes here and there. But then it's also easier to be like, oh, that thing was so annoying. Did you watch that movie that came out so bad? Like it's just easier to say those things as opposed to being like, well, I like this part about it and this part of it. And then you might be met with like a deadpan. It's like easier for people to bond over negativity than positivity. Hot take. Yeah. Also, a few other different things too, right? Like if you're in the military, bonding over the fraternal aspect, going through the hardness, that's a negative experience that creates sort of bonding as well, right? Fraternities in general, hazing. I guess it is more of a social, not construct, but as a social reality, I guess. A social glue. I'm gonna do the classic structure answering a question. Let me start with the last one. Let me start with the last point. So the last point, it's kind of unfortunate. I'm mentioning this at minute 32 when we're wrapping up in a few minutes, but uh, it probably would lend context to the conversation that me and Craig are at very different points in our lives. We're pretty close in age, Craig, but we're still what about 2 years, 2.5 years apart? 2.5, 2 years. Yeah, because you're around the age of my brother, and my brother is about 2 years older than me. So, uh, but we're at very different parts in our lives. Whereas the we could probably agree with the candy. I do have a little bit of a sweet tooth, but the drinking, hooking up. I am single, so that I wonder if I should have tried to get that in earlier in our show, just for context for listeners, where we are coming up from different focal points, different points of view into it. But that being said, I can comment on the drinking part. I wouldn't have put the words to it the way you put it, but when you said it, it made me think of I do appreciate the benefits of not drinking, but there are times where, like the one of the parties over the weekend, I drank considerably less than a lot of other people, and I was uncomfortable most of the night, and for a variety of reasons. But it was like, but then you could also argue I came off limited sleep. I was way more irritable. Like people just bothered me just by saying stuff, and that could be a sign of minimal sleep, which I hadn't experienced in a while. So that could be a little different. But let's go back to the third, suspicion of people being more comfortable as other people. That is interesting. And actually, the second one are similar points. This is social anxiety about people pretending to be someone else. But the third one, for those who don't know, Craig knows this, but I'm intrigued by acting methods, performance methods, and my into it is acting is perceived as fake, but performance is perceived as, like, depending on the context, a really good thing. Performance in social situations, oh, you're fake. Performance in sports, you're a legend. So I'm intrigued by that whole thing because especially over the weekend, there's some people that I've had very good conversations with over the years, but then this past weekend, I didn't feel like going out of my way to introduce myself. I feel like I was introducing myself to them again. And I'm pretty sure they saw me, but I was like, I don't want to be the one that's always going to you. Like, if you actually gave a shit, you would you would talk to me. That could seem super petty too, but I just remember thinking that over the weekend. And at that one party, I had very little drink. So that was like a sober thought. It was like, I just don't, like, you know who I am. I've talked to you a million times. Like, why do I have to be the one that's, I guess we're just not that tight. And I guess that's fine. But when I think about it from a performance standpoint, I thought about it. It was weird that they didn't come up to me. And now I have an idea of them. It's like, oh, were they faking with me the whole last 3-4 times I talked to them? Now I'm like, that's weird. So from a performance side, it might have been good PR for one of us to just go to the other, keep it short, keep it tight, and just go about the day, go about the night. Because now I'm thinking, that's weird. Like, it just discounts my past interactions with them, I think. But I could be overstating here too, but I'm trying to work through this list here. Yeah, yeah. I will say, I will wrap up. I didn't get through all your points there. Like, I didn't get to the pop culture mismatch, but growing up, I didn't relate with reading at all. I related with movie watching, partially because I felt like I was a slow reader, couldn't focus. Always thought I had ADHD. Everyone says I don't, but I was like, it'd be great if I did, because it would explain why I can't focus when I read a goddamn book. Part of the reason why I majored in history is that I thought, well, if I major in history, I'm going to learn how to read. I'm going to have to learn how to read semi-fast, and I kind of did, but I feel like that muscle kind of atrophied after I got the major, because I don't really need to read as much. And also just the nature of society today, we get so much of our content through multimedia. That's not always written words. So I try to give you a 30-second pitch on that pop culture part. But what else? There was something else. Oh, so last things I'll say, because it sounds like a lot of what I was saying was pretty negative, and I wouldn't argue with it that it was. Couple things that helped me bring some peace of mind to it that maybe can make it a little more positive is that perception is reality. So I perceived something and I made it my reality, but that could be not true. Like, I perceived that this person, that we knew each other pretty well, but maybe they're like, I don't really know this dude that well. Like, we talk, but I don't feel comfortable enough to talk to him. So that's a possibility too. And then the other thing was, so hard to keep my thoughts in line here. But the other thing was, I think one's a broad point, one's a specific point. So let me do the specific point first. Something that rubbed me the wrong way is that this person was talking to one of my friends that they actively talked bad about to me. So it was a weird thing to see across the room that they were talking. And I was already irritated that night. I wanted to go up and be like, oh, how you guys doing? Like, in my head, I'm like, I know you've talked shit about this person who's a really close friend of mine. And now it's like, what, you're acting like that was rubbing me the wrong way. But then, broader point, when I have an issue with someone or something, I usually have to remind myself to say, Randy, you have to give people the freedom to change. Because the reality is they might have said something in the past they don't actually believe anymore. And you have to give them that ability to change. I think a lot of angst that I've received or even given to other people comes from that not accepting the truth of, hey man, hey Randy, you got to give people the freedom to change. Because if you don't, you're always going to have them under an umbrella that they don't even identify with. I love that you said that phrase, because I rationally agree with that. And then there's times where I'm like, I'm fucking tired of giving the benefit of the doubt. I feel like I'm discounting everything here. I'm like, oh, well, they could have had a bad day. And sometimes I'm so bullish on that, but there's other times I'm bearish, where it's like, how many times do I need to give the benefit of the doubt before I can just be like, I don't like this interactions in this person. So it's funny to talk about, but it's like I'm both being negative and trying to be positive at the same time, which is, but it's coming off mostly negative because it's a couple things rubbed me the wrong way over the weekend. Yeah. And actually, can I say one more thing while I'm on my soapbox, where I'm trying to make all these connections to higher ideas? Because we started out like we were just going to kind of make this episode a little bit of a funny comedy episode, but we found our way to get serious. We found our way. So, but one of the things I was going to say is there's this phrase that people say. It says, it is what it is. And when people say that phrase, Craig, you can agree or disagree, but in my experience, when people say that phrase, it's usually a negative phrase. Oh, it is what it is. They say it with a sigh. But if you actually think about that phrase, that phrase at its core is don't label things good or bad. They just are. Like, it is what it is. It's not good. It's not bad. It is. Halloween just is. And I like that way of thinking because it goes along with the perception as reality. If I perceive something as negative, I'm going to find evidence that it's negative. If I perceive it as good, I'm going to find evidence that it's good. But if I just say it is what it is, but not the negative, I prefaced it with, when people say that phrase, it's more of like, I can't control it. I didn't want it, but it is what it is. But that phrase at its core with no emotion, I think is a great phrase. Like, this thing is a thing, but I'm not going to label it because that's going to make my perception either overly negative or overly positive, which I feel like it's easy to understand. Overly negative is not good, but overly positive is probably a little not great too, because it's like false reality, but it's easier to explain from the negative side. Exactly. You can't give us a review because that would have to give us your stance, which you're not allowed to do at this moment in time. That is hilarious. That is a hilarious point, actually. It's hilarious for me. It's not hilarious for anyone except maybe me and Craig. Yeah, I think so. So I want to just wrap up with some quick observations on today. We started off trying to do something different. Like, I kind of wanted to put Craig in the hot seat. I wanted to almost play to like, I am one political affiliation and Craig is another in terms of Halloween. But I feel like our rapport, it's an antithesis to us to be antagonistic with one another. We found organically a way to be like, well, I can see your point this way. And Craig, that's a good point. I feel that way too. That's the opposite of antagonistic. Like, there was very little devil's advocating that was happening. And I thought going in, I would try to create that environment because it would be so different for us. But I feel like we ended up going into our quote unquote habit, which I would say is pretty wholesome, but I'm thinking about our last episode with all our listeners. If you haven't listened to our last episode, we talked about the merits of an entertainment podcast. Craig had talked about Spike's Car Radio being a really, really important entertainment show for him. And then I talked about I could argue it's a little too philosophical, but I argued a little bit about I told Craig, my answer is probably not what you thought. I think there's an ethics question around entertainment because we all know social media, it doesn't add value to our lives, but it adds value if you're a company selling something. So it's like the entertainment side is I am actively distracting you from the big rocks, moving the big rocks in your life to focus on the rocks I'm trying to move. So I think I got a little too philosophical because if that's true, then I have to literally end my career right now because my career involves getting attention from people. So, but I just try to make some connections there. That closing was probably about 3.5 minutes, which sounds short, but it felt long because I threw a lot out there. But thanks for tuning in, guys. We started off thinking we were going to be jokesters comedy. We ended up just being Craig and Randy as friends. So it'll be interesting, guys, to see how we evolve into a true co-hosting relationship because some of the best co-hosts are not necessarily friends before they start. They're just good co-hosts. So appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us on this journey because it'll be interesting to see how things evolve, what sticks around, what doesn't stick around in terms of how we do this show. I'm loving the audio only. I feel like it just lets me and Craig just not be video Randy and video Craig. It's Randy and Craig. I think that'll be helpful moving forward so that if and when we do bring video in, we'll have like a really intentional reason that it won't be video Craig and video Randy. It'll be Craig on video and Randy on video. So thanks, guys. All right, so I'm stopping recording. Let me just say real quick, I don't know if you want to do reflections today, but this weekend was so many things irritated me this weekend, and I came out today, and I'm sorry. No, actually, I'm not going to apologize because you're one of my best friends, so I don't always have to apologize to you. But I will say I did feel like I was pushing into therapy ground in that episode because these things were so current for me, and I hadn't fully processed them yet. So I think I started going into therapy range, which I like doing, but I don't know if I I like doing it. I like talking about shit that bothers me. But I'm just not sure if that's productive use of our show. But hey, man, I don't know. Okay, because I felt like I was complaining a good amount. That I think it's why I kept vocalizing. I'm being negative and positive at the same time. I vocalized that a few times, but okay. Also, there's another thing I thought of with the newsletter I've been doing. I thought of two more ideas because I'm doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday newsletters, and I just thought of something I thought was a great idea. There's two ways to do content. One has more consequences than the other, but one's easier to do than the other, and it's E squared. It's E. It's E. They both start with E, but I say E squared. I thought maybe there might be some marketing material around that, but there's expert led content and there's expression led content. You can be the expert or you can express yourself. One is easier to do, but one has more consequences. So, like, I think it's easier to express yourself, but there's more consequences with that because I could very well, someone listening to this could be, yo, Randy was complaining the whole time. That's dumb. That was really annoying. Easier for me to express myself, but more consequences in terms of not adding value to other people and being perceived as annoying. The expert is hard to do, but when you do it, it's more objective. It's like, I'm telling you facts, but it's hard to, that has to be more prepared and it takes more actual expertise. So that's the way I was thinking about content on yesterday because it came to mind yesterday. And I think today I did what was easy. I did the expression led. I just did. It wasn't really fact I was pulling from. It was well, I guess it was perception, but I think of it as E and E, expert and then expression. All right. Well, what do you think about we've been doing mostly like Monday, Friday episodes. We did last week, Monday, Thursday, Friday with the transition to audio only. What's our tentative plan for this week? Because that's something that we can control. We can't totally control how these episodes play out. And that's been proven because we don't really know how they're going to play out until they play out. And then we have to talk to each other about, like, what did you think? I thought I was being negative and complaining. You did not feel that way. You did not perceive it that way. But we didn't get there. We tried to go there, but we didn't get there. Is I think what I was trying to say. Yeah, even if it's an opposite stance, it doesn't get adversarial. Yeah. That does sound valuable. It's interesting from a content perspective because content, a lot of powerful content that gets attention is adversarial by nature, but we are not adversarial by nature. So once we made the move to audio, I like how intimate it is because I'm just rationalizing the audio only, but I do think that we don't have to play the attention game as much with audio because when we get a listener to our show, I think our retention could be potentially higher than if we got a listener to our video show. Like, it might be easier to get people to our video show, but they might not stick around. I think if we get people to the audio show, not everyone will stay, but I just feel like audio is so much more intimate and it'll be harder to acquire listeners with audio only, but I think the ones that we do acquire will be high value listeners, which is interesting because it goes back to that famous article of 1,000 true fans. If we had 1,000 true listeners, this show could actually do something, which is crazy to think about. It's not a lot of people. It might sound like a lot of people because we haven't released any. We have 0 listeners right now. But when you think about 1,000 people, I have 1,000 friends on Facebook and I don't talk to like any of them. But if all of them listen, which not all of them will, but that's like not that many people. Anyways, yeah. What do you want to do for the I like it too, actually. I mean, certain weeks I could see myself pushing us to go more, but I wouldn't want to go less. Like, once we video Monday, Friday felt like enough, but now that we're doing audio, I like doing episode back-to-back days because tomorrow is going to be super different than today because I'm going to make it I'm going to be aware of, like, I don't want to drift into venting lane. You said I wasn't there, but tomorrow I won't be that way because I did it today. Whereas if I wait till Friday, it might be the same exact thing. All right. Yeah. And I'm happy we used Podcasto last week because I want to find a mobile option because I'm not always going to have my computer for when we were recording. So But I'm thinking right now we'll do Adobe at least every other episode, or try. So that at least every other episode we get decent audio. That's kind of my idea. And then in between, we try a tool to keep us nimble. So I'm thinking tomorrow I'll probably be on my desktop, but I'm thinking we might try to do Riverside audio tomorrow. But I'll just send you a link tomorrow. That's just me. I don't like to get comfortable with one tool, because what if Adobe shuts this down? It's like, well, then fuck, what are we using? So I'm also happy to use Google Meet one time and just say fuck it, like just see how the audio quality comes out. Well, I have a Google Meet subscription that I don't use anymore. I'd like to cancel it, but I can't because all my files are in it and I can't get them out. It's hard to get them out. I don't know, but I'm thinking maybe we do Google Meet one of these days too. Even if we are video, we'll just shut the cameras off, and then I'll just find a way to strip the audio out. So, all right. That is 1:30, right? PM. Yeah, let's do that. It also would just be nice to try a little bit earlier for me. I like the end of the day that we've been doing, but that's another thing too. Trying different times of the day when we can, I think, is another testing ground for us. That's like, because we can discuss. You could say to me, "Hey, Randy, I love doing the podcast at this time," and then I say, "I love doing it this time," and then we can try to find a compromise, or we can even make a joke of it on the podcast. It's like, all right, guys, for the next 6 episodes, Craig likes recording at this time and Randy at this time. So we're going to give each person the benefit of the doubt each time. And you tell us who did a better job, like to create that kind of audience engagement, to be like, oh, we gave the advantage to so-and-so today that they wanted. Who did better? Or like, I don't know. That might not be it, but something that I'm just thinking about now, leaning into the audio. I don't have to think about video at all. So I'm just thinking, what are ways we just kind of just create our own engaging community nature of the show, like get people involved. So I'll say one thing before we go. I double checked the domain name CraigandRandy.com is available. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of slick. If CraigRandy .com is available, I can almost guarantee CraigandRandy.com is available. What I will say, I was thinking CraigRandy.com. And then if we do make a social media account, that would be at Craig and Randy, because the and helps it be available. Like Craig Randy on social media is probably not, but Craig and Randy probably is on social media. So that's why I thought Randy was better than Randall, because Randall is a last name. Whereas Randy, I've never heard someone's last name be Randy. And yeah, but that's a minor detail because we don't need that right now. But I was thinking about with the show, it might make sense to have some sort of, even with like in a shared email address or a shared Twitter where we can direct listeners. Because right. I mean, we'll get some analytics through the Acast podcast host, but it might be better to give people a reason to talk to us. Send us a DM on this, and then we can be like, we have a shared inbox. So we can just say, oh, it's Craig today. It's Randy today. And they can be, they're talking to me. It's like, oh, I'd really love to talk to Craig. Can you let them know that? It's like, yeah, sure. I'll chat with them. Like, I think that, and I think Twitter's probably the best spot for that. I know people have different stances on Elon, but Twitter seems to be a great spot to connect with persons who are doing content. Oh, you told me about that. You told me about that. Oh yeah, I'll make a note. Okay. I thought also the email address could be, and we have a shared inbox, because that's not subject to social media fluctuations. That's just like an email. I thought maybe like the show at CraigRandy.com or like, or hey at Randy, at Craig Randy. Also, just for the time being, I have too many domains. I got rid of a few, but I have randysplain.com. I could make a general one for us that's like, for the time being, any questions, email us at insert username at randysplain.com. We don't have a domain for this show yet. You'll see, we'll use Randy's for the time being. Like, we can also do that too. I just thought it'd be nice to just augment because some people might not leave reviews. People might not share it on social media. But if we're like, talk to us, maybe they'll just talk to us and we'll learn something. And also, it's probably good to know what type of listener is reaching out to you. Okay, so I'll just try to, in that case, I guess I'll just kind of think of what, maybe I'll make an executive decision on that then, because I have domains currently, and this way we don't have to buy a new domain if we're not totally sold on it. Quicker on post news instead of Twitter. Like it would be longer on Twitter. You mean? Oh, okay, okay. Well, I'll try to put some thought into it. Also, side note, if we've joked when we were younger about starting a company together. I don't know how much of reality that is for us, but I was like, when I saw CraigandRandy.com, I was like, what could be a company that's not actually attached to our names, but it is. And I was like, Louis Maurice. LouisMaurice.com. It kind of sounds like a fashion brand, but I was like, we could I just thought I was like, oh, we could white label a service that people might not even know it's us, unless we want them to, unless we just link to it. But I was like, it's kind of a nice ring, Louis Maurice. Doc. Yeah, so that was another thought I had. But yeah, for now, I guess the main goal is just keep recording. I'm going to try to get as many audio files onto our podcast host before we talk tomorrow, because I'm already getting unorganized with it. So I want to just get them on the host. And now that it's only audio, it'll be a little easier than handling video files. So I'm going to try to do that by tomorrow. But yeah, I just have to, I have most of our files. I just have to find the rest of them. Well, we're doing 3 a week right now, right? So if we release 1 a week, we'll have episodes for a very long time. But if we want to challenge ourselves, we release 2 a week. We release 3 a week to like force ourselves to get our content into the capitalist market sooner. But once a week feels right. This way we can just have episodes that are automatically going to come out for the next so many months. But then we can start doing a little bit of hype marketing. I don't. So the reason why I bring up hype marketing is we have an episode come out once a week, but then we're going to do more. So we can like drop exclusive episodes. We just recorded an episode live yesterday. Check it out. Special release. Like we can kind of play with that sort of mindset around hype as well. But also if you go off the grid podcasting and I go off the grid podcasting, we'll still have episodes coming out and we'll still have a way for people to reach out to us with an email or a thing. So we might not even know what episode came out a certain week because we already scheduled it. But people were like, oh, I love this part. It's like, oh, that's great. Or it's like, I heard you say something on the show about something. I know someone who can help you with that. And then they like, it's almost like, I feel like there's a bunch of different things that can happen. And I think the foundation is it's a combination of pre-scheduled episodes and then special release episodes. But also, I think so too. Also, now there's just audio. I feel like it'll be even easier to be like publish, and then. I mean, I have a lot of ideas. Like, I think it would be really cool if. Also, do you want me to just write down my ideas and send them to you? Because I feel like I could get long-winded with this. Okay. Okay, I think I'll try to use the my Gmail's a nightmare right now, but I think I'm going to use the Google Sheet and just create a new sheet on your sheet that says uh, random ideas, or maybe I'll say Randy ideas. So this way, you create a sheet with Craig ideas, and then I can read yours if and when. All right, all right, good stuff, man. I'm just gonna get a quick listen to this audio, see how it sounds, and then I'll get it into the podcast host. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow, 1:30 Eastern, 10:30 Pacific. Are we planning for 30 minutes? Are we planning for an hour? Okay, plan for 30. I'll record as soon as you join, and I think that'll speed up the start. And record it. Okay, I've been getting in a bad habit of no, not bad, not good, just the habit. It just is. When we do these recordings, I tend to not record the one after, which is I don't have a good reason why I don't do that. But it's almost like that thing of I'm distracted. Like producer mode keeps me distracted, which is. But I agree. Let's just record it. There's no disadvantage to recording a 5-minute reflection. If we do the 5-minute reflection, yeah. All right. All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you tomorrow then. All right. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Excuse me. Talk to you tomorrow. All right. Peace.